Now, when my next guest moved into a flat in Cardiff Bay, she felt it was like her dream home. But Cerys Owen's dream has turned into a nightmare as hidden problems in the fabric of a high-rise apartment block emerged in the aftermath of the Grenfell Tower fire. Her flat is now effectively unsellable and worthless. Well, across Wales, there are thousands of people in a similar situation, unable to sell, while at the same time facing repair bills of tens of thousands of pounds. Well, Cerys lives in Victoria Wharf in Cardiff Bay and runs the Wales Leaseholder Action Group. Morning, Cerys.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I mean, this all came about in the aftermath of Grenfell, when apartment buildings, like yours, were looked at and surveyed. I mean, what is wrong with your flat?
So around August 2019, we had an EWS1 survey carried out, which basically means that a fire engineer looked at the external walls and the makeup of them. And they're looking really for combustible materials, but they found some in the makeup of the walls, but the main issues that they found is that the buildings were not really built to spec. So they're missing key components like fire breaks, the internal compartmentation isn't up to scratch, and more often it's these problems, the sort of the shortcuts, I guess, that developers were taking at the time, and it's just.
Go on, sorry, Cerys, continue.
It's just that these issues, a lot of people are saying that, that the buildings were compliant at the point of build, and really the issues that we're finding more and more often now is that they weren't, and that's one of the biggest issues we face at the moment.
So where does this leave you? Because of the terms of the lease, you and the other residents are now liable for these repair costs, yeah?
Yes. So under the lease, we are legally responsible for the cost of the remedial work, the interim safety measures, and knock-on impacts such as buildings insurance. I mean, since July this year, the leaseholders at Victoria Wharf effectively have been charged 1.2 million, and that's without even starting on the estimated costs of the external walls, which is around 20 million.
20 million, and how much does that work out per individual?
It's roughly just under £60,000 per leaseholder.
And you don't have that money and don't want to spend that money?
Absolutely not. No, it's completely unrealistic to expect that any of us can sort of afford to pay for this, and we shouldn't be paying for it anyway. It's the developer's responsibility, not ours.
So in terms of the people who built the flats, Taylor Wimpey, what have they said?
It's a bit of a stock response, really, that we've seen from all developers. Taylor Wimpey has stated that they have no legal responsibility for these issues and they won't admit any liability for them. And they still believe that the buildings were built the way they should have been, and they were signed off by building control, even though they were sort of self-certified by Taylor Wimpey themselves. They have made a goodwill gesture of around £53,000, but when you're looking at 28 million to fix it, it really doesn't go far enough.
We do have a statement from Taylor Wimpey, the developer. They say we have no ownership or legal interest in the buildings. The freeholder, together with the management company Firstport, are responsible for the fire safety, including the external walls. They say they've committed to covering 50%, as you say, of the costs associated with internal fire compartmentation works. I mean, last week, the Housing Minister, Julie James, wrote an open letter to developers in Wales, and she clearly says that she doesn't believe the responsibility for repairs should lie with you, the residents. I mean, how much hope does that give you?
It's a bit more hope than we had, I suppose, before that statement. It was a welcome statement from Julie James, but it really isn't going far enough in terms of supporting us as leaseholders. We're facing these costs now, we're being charged now, and if we don't pay these costs, then we risk losing our homes. And honestly, while some developers may choose to meet with Julie James and discuss different options, I don't see any of them coming forward willingly to pay for these costs. If they felt a moral obligation to pay and cover them, I think they'd have done so already. So we really need stronger action from the government to really force these developers into taking the proper action that they should be and to be held accountable.
Cerys, how does this make you feel? You bought the property in good faith, that, a swanky flat in the Bay, dream property really, and That now is in tatters, really. How does that leave you? How does it make you feel?
It really is a horrible situation. I mean, the financial pressure, just that on its own is enough. It's completely crippling. And when you think of that in comparison to sort of the annual profits that developers like Taylor Wimpey are making, it is gut-wrenching. But the sort of mental toll it's having as well is huge. And the worry and the stress and anxiety is unbelievable. And people here are really living in fear. We've got residents suffering with panic attacks on medication for anxiety and depression. People are sleeping with fire extinguishers next to their beds. And, we can't go on like this.
People are sleeping with fire extinguishers next to them?
Yeah. And sort of like emergency bags packed, ready to go at the first sight of fire because, they just know they need to get out. And it's not a good situation. People can't live like that.
Have you contemplated just walking away?
Honestly, yes. At some point with the costs that we're facing, it's going to become more financially viable for me to walk away and not pay these costs and lose my home rather than, staying and facing being made bankrupt and paying all these charges. But I mean, there's so many of us now in this situation, and there's thousands of us across Wales, and more are now speaking out, and we're getting louder, and at some point somebody's going to have to listen to us, and we're going to keep fighting. I mean, at the end of the day, we bought first homes, family homes, retirement homes. We did not intentionally buy unsafe homes, but we are here to fight for them to be made safe and to hold those responsible to account.
Cerys, thank you very much for talking to us this morning and sharing your story. Cerys there, who lives in Cardiff Bay and runs the Wales Leaseholder Action Group. Just so you know, the management company First Port say, we understand how difficult the uncertainty is for residents and have communicated regularly with them. First Port also been doing everything possible, they say, to support the residents in seeking any funding to resolve the fire issues. And the Welsh Government too say it's critically important residents feel safe in their homes and have ensured the necessary immediate fire protections are in place. Just hearing people are sleeping with fire extinguishers next to them. They say we are actively exploring funding options to support leaseholders with identified defects in the buildings. And they go on to say, in addition, they've commissioned further research on leasehold to enable them to consider broader reforms to improve the system. There is much more on this story. You can hear it tonight here on BBC Radio Wales in Eye on Wales. Catch it this evening at 6:30.